The room smelled like money and fear. Crystal chandeliers lit the underground hall, casting golden reflections over polished marble floors. Men in tailored suits sat in silence, their faces cold, eyes sharp, like predators waiting for prey. Elena Hart stood on the stage, barefoot, heart racing. She could barely hear the auctioneer's voice over the pounding in her ears. She had been told it was a job interview. Why? Now she understood the truth too late. Her wrists trembled as she clasped her hands together, nails digging into her palms to keep from breaking down. Don't cry. Crying made it worse. She scanned the room, dozens of men, none of them looking at her like a human being. She wasn't a person here. She was a price. Starting bid, the auctioneer announced smoothly, 2 million. A hand lifted. Then another. Numbers climbed effortlessly. Her breath came shallow. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. At the back of the room, a man sat completely still. He hadn't raised his hand once. He didn't need to. Others watched him nervously, gauging his reaction before bidding again. Adrian Volkov. Elena didn't know his name yet, but she felt his presence like a weight pressing against her chest. Dark hair. Sharp features. Expression unreadable. His eyes met hers. And in that moment the world went silent. There was no hunger in his gaze. No cruelty. Only calculation. That terrified her more than anything else. 5 million, someone called. Adrian didn't move. The auctioneer hesitated, glancing toward him. Everyone did. The room waited. Then Adrian lifted his hand. Once. 10 million. The room froze. No one challenged him. The gavel struck. Sold. Elena's knees nearly gave out. Adrian stood. Controlled. Final. As he approached the stage, Elena braced herself. This was the man who owned her now. He stopped a few feet away. You're trembling, he said quietly. She lifted her chin, forcing herself to meet his gaze. I won't beg. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval? Good, Adrian replied. I didn't buy you to watch you break. Her heart stuttered. He turned to the guards. Take her home. Home. The word sounded like a lie. In the car, silence wrapped around them. Elena stared out the window, city lights blurring into streaks of color. She felt his presence beside her, solid, immovable. Why me? She finally whispered. Adrian didn't look at her. Because you were never supposed to be there, he said. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, he continued, someone made a mistake selling you. Her breath caught. Mistake or mercy? The mansion gates opened slowly. High walls. Armed guards. Absolute isolation. Fear crept up her spine. Adrian turned to her at last. You are not my prisoner, he said firmly. But you are under my protection. And if I try to leave? She asked. His jaw tightened. Then I will let you, he said. But the world outside is far crueler than I am. The car door opened. Elena stepped into a life she never chose. And Adrian Volkov watched her go. Already realizing the auction hadn't given him control. It had given him a weakness. The mansion was silent in a way that felt unnatural. No laughter. No music. Just the quiet hum of power and control. Elena followed the housekeeper down long marble corridors, every step echoing like a reminder that she didn't belong here. This is your room, the woman said gently, opening a heavy door. Elena stepped inside and froze. The room was enormous. Soft lighting. Clean white sheets. A balcony overlooking the city. No locks. No chains. It didn't feel like a prison. That scared her more. Dinner was served precisely at 8. Elena almost didn't go. But hunger and curiosity won. Adrian Volkov sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, expression unreadable. The table between them felt like a border neither dared cross. You can sit, he said. She did. They ate in silence for a long moment. Then Elena spoke. You didn't touch me, she said quietly. At the auction. In the car. Even now. Adrian lifted his gaze slowly. You were not bought for that, he replied. Then what was I bought for? She asked. His jaw tightened. To keep you alive. She stared at him. You expect me to believe that? No, Adrian said. I expect you to listen. He placed his fork down carefully. You were sold by men who don't leave loose ends, he continued. If I hadn't bid, you would not have survived the night. Elena's stomach dropped. You're lying. I don't lie, he said simply. After dinner he gave her rules. Not shouted. Not threatened. Spoken calmly like law. You can go anywhere in the house, Adrian said. No guards in your room. No one touches you without your consent. You do not leave the property without telling me. And if I break the rules? Elena asked. He met her gaze. Then I will break whoever put you in danger. Her breath hitched. Days passed. Elena began to notice things. Adrian never raised his voice. Never wasted words. Never entered her space unless invited. Yet he was always aware of her. A shadow that never left. She caught him watching her from across rooms, not with ownership, but concern. That confused her more than cruelty ever could. One night a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked through the sky as Elena jolted awake, breath ragged. A knock came at her door. She hesitated, then opened it. Adrian stood there. I saw the lights turn on, he said. You're afraid. I'm fine, she lied. He studied her for a moment. Then he held out a glass of water. Drink. She did. Their fingers brushed. Electric. Adrian stepped back immediately. Get some rest, he said. Before she could stop herself, Elena asked. Why do you look at me like that? He paused. Like what? Like you're waiting for something to go wrong. Adrian's voice dropped. Because with me, it always does. After he left, Elena sat on the bed, heart pounding. She wasn't a prisoner. She was a responsibility. And Adrian Volkov had never failed to protect what was his. The terrifying part? She was starting to feel safe. The safety was how the cage closed quietly around your heart. Elena began to realize that silence inside the Volkov mansion was not emptiness. It was discipline. Every staff member moved with quiet precision, eyes lowered, voices controlled. Power lived here not loudly but deeply. And Adrian Volkov was the center of it all. She saw him most mornings in the study, standing before floor-to-ceiling windows, speaking softly into his phone in a language she didn't understand. His tone was calm, but the men on the other end sounded afraid. When he finished those calls, he always stood still for a moment, as if carrying the weight of decisions that ruined lives. One afternoon, Elena wandered into the library, a room larger than her childhood apartment. Leather-bound books lined the walls, mixed with ledgers, maps, and old photographs. One photo stopped her cold. A much younger Adrian stood beside an older man, blood on his knuckles, eyes empty. The caption read only one word, Volkov. You shouldn't touch that. Elena turned sharply. Adrian stood in the doorway. I'm sorry, she said, stepping back. I was just curious, he finished. Yes. He didn't scold her. Instead, he walked forward and picked up the photo. That was the day my father taught me mercy, Adrian said flatly. Elena frowned. It doesn't look merciful. It wasn't, he replied. For me. He placed the photo back and met her eyes. For the first time, there was no armor in his expression, only something old and scarred. My father built this empire on fear, Adrian continued. When he died, everyone expected me to be worse. And aren't you? Elena asked softly. Adrian studied her for a long moment. I'm controlled. That's the difference. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Curiosity gnawed at her. She searched his name online, but found nothing beyond rumors. Billionaire. Phantom investor. Crime whispers with no proof. A man who erased his footprints wherever he walked. The next morning everything changed. Gunshots shattered the stillness. Elena bolted upright as alarms screamed through the mansion. Footsteps thundered in the halls. She barely had time to reach the door before it burst open. Adrian stood there, a gun in his hand. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "What's happening?" she gasped. "They found you." Before she could ask who, Adrian pulled her into the panic room hidden behind the wall of her bedroom. Steel sealed shut around them. Darkness swallowed the space except for a single overhead light. Elena's hands trembled. "You said you bought me to keep me alive." "I did," Adrian said firmly. "And I still am." Voices echoed faintly outside. A gunshot. A scream. Elena's breath shook. "Because of me, people are dying." Adrian turned to her sharply. "No. Because of them." Silence followed. Then footsteps retreated. When the doors finally opened, dawn had broken. The mansion stood untouched, but something had shifted. Elena stared at Adrian, really looked at him now. Blood stained his sleeve. His jaw was clenched so tightly it trembled. "You were willing to kill for me," she said. "I was willing to die," he corrected. That was the moment she understood. Adrian Volkov hadn't bought her as property. He had claimed her as a line he would never let anyone cross. And somewhere between the auction room and the gunfire, the most dangerous man in the city had done the one thing he never allowed himself to do. He cared. After the attack, nothing in the mansion felt the same. The guards doubled. The gates stayed sealed. Every shadow seemed heavier, more alert. Elena felt it most in the way Adrian moved. Faster, sharper, constantly aware of where she was. His control hadn't cracked, but it had narrowed, focused entirely on her. He insisted she stay close. Not locked away, not confined, but always within reach. If she entered a room, his eyes followed. If she left the garden, someone escorted her. Elena told herself it was about safety, yet something in his silence felt more personal than strategy. One evening, Elena overheard raised voices in the study. Adrian rarely argued, which made the sound stop her cold. She stood frozen in the hallway as a man's voice snapped, angry and reckless. "She's a liability," the man said. "You should have let her disappear." Adrian's voice followed, quiet, lethal. "Say her name again like that and you won't leave this house." Elena stepped back, heart pounding. For the first time she understood. He wasn't protecting an asset. He was defending a choice. Later that night, Adrian found her on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Wind tugged at her hair, the night cool against her skin. "You heard," he said. "Yes." He didn't deny it. "My enemies believe you're my weakness now." Elena turned to him. "Am I?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower than she'd ever heard it. "You're the reason I can't make certain decisions anymore." Her breath caught. That admission cost him more than any threat ever could. Days later, the danger followed them beyond the walls. Adrian took her with him to a charity gala. Public, crowded, watched by the city's elite. Elena wore a deep red dress chosen by someone else. But when Adrian saw her, something dark flickered in his eyes. Possession. Fear. Want. All tightly restrained. He placed a hand at the small of her back as they moved through the room. "Stay close," he murmured. "If anything feels wrong, you leave with me." "And if you can't?" she asked. "Then I burn the room down," he said calmly. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The attack came suddenly. A glass shattered. A scream cut through the music. Adrian reacted instantly, pulling Elena into his chest as gunfire erupted near the exits. Guests scattered. Chaos swallowed the elegance. Adrian shielded her with his body, guiding her through smoke and panic, his hand never leaving hers. A bullet struck the wall inches from her head. Adrian roared an order in another language, and the room answered. By the time they reached the armored car, his suit was torn, blood seeping from his shoulder. "You're hurt," Elena whispered, hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. "It's nothing," he said, though his face was pale. At the mansion, as a doctor stitched him up, Elena stayed. She didn't look away. She didn't run. When it was over, Adrian dismissed everyone. "You should rest," he told her. She didn't move. "You took a bullet for me," she said. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he replied quietly. "I did." Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. "I don't belong to you," Elena said carefully. Adrian stepped closer, but stopped as if crossing that last inch might destroy him. "No," he agreed. "You don't." Then his voice broke just barely. "But if anyone tries to take you from me again, there will be nothing left of them." Elena realized something then, standing inches from the most dangerous man she'd ever known. He had crossed a line he could never return from. Adrian Volkov had chosen her over power. And the world would make him pay for it. After the gala, Adrian stopped sleeping. Elena noticed it in the quiet hours of the mansion. Lights still on in his study long after midnight. Footsteps pacing when the rest of the house was still. When she passed him in the halls, his eyes lingered just a second too long, as if memorizing her presence. He never touched her. That restraint was what unraveled him. Elena, meanwhile, felt the change in subtler ways. Guards no longer followed her inside the house, only watched from a distance. Her favorite tea appeared every morning without her asking. Books she mentioned once were placed beside her bed. Protection had turned into attention. And attention into something dangerously close to care. One evening, Elena found Adrian in the gym, alone, fury burning through every movement as he struck the heavy bag. His knuckles were split, blood staining the wraps. She should have turned away. He didn't. "You're going to destroy your hands," she said softly. He froze. Slowly he turned to her. "You shouldn't be here," Adrian said. "I know," she replied. "But you look like someone who doesn't know how to stop." Something in her voice broke through him. He sank onto the bench, breath heavy, shoulders tense. Elena approached carefully, taking the first aid kit from the shelf. "Sit still," she said. He let her. As she cleaned his wounds, Adrian watched her like she was doing something holy. "No one has touched me like this in years," he admitted quietly. Elena swallowed. "Then why let me?" "Because you don't look at me like I'm a monster," he said. "And I don't deserve that mercy." Her hands paused. "You saved my life," she said. "More than once. That doesn't erase what I am." "No," she agreed. "But it explains why you're alone." The words hit him harder than any bullet. Adrian stood abruptly, stepping away like proximity itself was a threat. "This ends," he said. "Whatever this is." Elena's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because I'm losing control," he said, voice low. "And I never lose control." The next day Elena saw it clearly. A woman approached Adrian at lunch. Beautiful, confident, familiar. She touched his arm. Laughed softly. Elena felt something twist painfully in her chest. Jealousy. The realization stunned her. She turned to leave, but Adrian's voice cut through the room. "Get your hand off me." The woman stiffened. "Adrian." "I said leave." When Elena looked back, Adrian was watching her. Only her. That night he knocked on her door. "I let you go," he said without preamble. Her heart dropped. "What?" "You can leave tomorrow," Adrian continued. "New identity. Money. Protection." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice shaking. "Because if you stay," he said, jaw clenched, "I will fall in love with you." Silence filled the room. Elena stared at him. "You already have," she whispered. For the first time since she'd met him, Adrian Volkov looked afraid. He closed his eyes. "Yes," he admitted. "I fell first." And nothing terrified him more than loving the woman he had once bought. Elena didn't sleep that night. Adrian's words echoed in her mind over and over. "I will fall in love with you." No one had ever spoken love like a warning before. At dawn she stood in her room staring at the packed bag by the door. Freedom sat inches away. Safety. A life untouched by blood and bullets. Yet her chest ached like something was being torn from it. She found Adrian in the study standing by the window as always. Morning light carved sharp lines across his face, making him look distant, unreachable. "I'm leaving," she said. He closed his eyes briefly. "I know. You're not going to stop me?" "No," he replied. "I promised." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You think letting me go will protect me?" "Yes." "And what about you?" That made him turn. For a moment the silence between them felt unbearable. "I don't matter," Adrian said. Elena shook her head. "You're wrong." She reached out before fear could stop her, her fingers brushing his hand. He inhaled sharply like the touch burned straight through him. "Don't," he warned softly. "I need to," she whispered. She wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. His heart was pounding. Fast, uneven, human. For 1 second Adrian stood frozen. Then he broke. His arms closed around her tightly, like he was afraid she'd disappear. His hand cradled the back of her head, fingers threading into her hair as he rested his forehead against hers. "This is why you have to go," he murmured. "Because I can't do this and still be the man I need to be." Elena pulled back just enough to look at him. "And I can't leave without knowing what this is." Before he could stop her, she kissed him. It was soft at first, hesitant, unsure. But when Adrian responded, it was like something ancient woke inside him. His hands tightened at her waist, grounding himself as the kiss deepened, slow and aching. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. "If I stay," Elena said quietly, "I'll never be free." "And if you leave," Adrian replied, his voice rough, "I'll never forgive myself." They stood there, torn between love and survival. That night Elena left. She didn't say goodbye. She couldn't. The car disappeared into the city before Adrian realized the truth. He wasn't relieved. He was empty. Hours later, alarms screamed through the mansion. Adrian stormed into the control room, eyes cold with terror. "She never made it to the safe house," a guard said. Adrian felt something inside him snap. "Find her," he ordered, voice deadly calm. "Burn the city if you have to." The man who once bought her for protection was gone. In his place stood a man willing to destroy everything. To bring back the woman he loved. Elena realized she was in danger the moment the car slowed. The driver's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. The streets around them were wrong. Too empty, too quiet. Before she could speak, another vehicle cut them off sharply, forcing them to stop. Men stepped out. Guns raised. "Elena Hart," one of them said calmly, "your protection has expired." Her heart dropped. She ran. A gunshot cracked the air, shattering glass behind her. Elena ducked into an alley, breath tearing from her lungs as footsteps thundered closer. She thought of Adrian, not the mafia boss, not the monster, but the man who held her like she mattered. Then the night exploded. Black SUVs flooded the street. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Men fell. Orders were shouted in a language she recognized now. Drink. He stepped into view like death itself. Coat discarded, weapon steady, eyes burning with something far more dangerous than rage. Fear. "Elena," he said, voice sharp. "Come to me." He didn't hesitate. She ran straight into his arms. He crushed her against his chest, one hand gripping her hair, the other shielding her body as bullets tore through the night around them. "I told you to stay safe," he said harshly. "You said you'd protect me," she cried. "I never stopped." They escaped moments before the street turned into a graveyard. Back at the mansion, the truth finally came out. Elena stood in the study as Adrian poured a drink he didn't touch. "The auction wasn't meant for you," he said. "You were collateral. Someone sold your name instead of another woman, someone far more valuable." Elena's knees weakened. So I was a mistake. No, Adrian said firmly. You were a warning. He explained everything. Rival families. A setup. The moment he saw her on that stage, terrified and out of place, he knew she wouldn't survive the night. So you bought me, she whispered. Yes, he said. To save you. And everything since then, she asked. Adrian stepped closer, voice raw. That was me failing to stop loving you. Elena reached for him, hands shaking. Then don't stop. For a brief moment the war disappeared. He kissed her then, not hesitant, not restrained. His hands framed her face like she was something precious. His lips desperate, full of everything he'd been holding back. She kissed him back just as fiercely, fingers gripping his shirt, grounding herself in him. When they broke apart, foreheads touching, Adrian whispered, "If you stay, people will die." Elena met his gaze. "If I leave, you will." The war didn't wait for their decision. Attacks came fast. One after another. Adrian's empire shook. Allies turned. Enemies circled. And in the middle of it all, Elena stayed. She tended his wounds. Held him when the night was loud with gunfire. Kissed him before every fight like it might be the last time. Adrian Volkov had never fought for territory like this before. He was fighting for love. And the city would bleed before he lost her again. Elena realized she was in danger the moment the car slowed. The driver's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. The streets around them were wrong. Too empty, too quiet. Before she could speak, another vehicle cut them off sharply, forcing them to stop. Men stepped out. Guns raised. "Elena Hart," one of them said calmly, "your protection has expired." Her heart dropped. She ran. A gunshot cracked the air, shattering glass behind her. Elena ducked into an alley, breath tearing from her lungs as footsteps thundered closer. She thought of Adrian, not the mafia boss, not the monster, but the man who held her like she mattered. Then the night exploded. Black SUVs flooded the street. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Men fell. Orders were shouted in a language she recognized now. He stepped into view like death itself. Coat discarded, weapon steady, eyes burning with something far more dangerous than rage. Fear. "Elena," he said, voice sharp. "Come to me." He didn't hesitate. She ran straight into his arms. He crushed her against his chest, one hand gripping her hair, the other shielding her body as bullets tore through the night around them. "I told you to stay safe," he said harshly. "You said you'd protect me," she cried. "I never stopped." They escaped moments before the street turned into a graveyard. Back at the mansion, the truth finally came out. Elena stood in the study as Adrian poured a drink he didn't touch. "The auction wasn't meant for you," he said. "You were collateral. Someone sold your name instead of another woman. Someone far more valuable." Elena's knees weakened. "So I was a mistake." "No," Adrian said firmly. "You were a warning." He explained everything. Rival families. A setup. The moment he saw her on that stage, terrified and out of place, he knew she wouldn't survive the night. "So you bought me," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "To save you." "And everything since then?" she asked. Adrian stepped closer, voice raw. "That was me failing to stop loving you." Elena reached for him, hands shaking. Then don't stop. For a brief moment the war disappeared. He kissed her then, not hesitant, not restrained. His hands framed her face like she was something precious. His lips desperate, full of everything he'd been holding back. She kissed him back just as fiercely, fingers gripping his shirt, grounding herself in him. When they broke apart, foreheads touching, Adrian whispered, "If you stay, people will die." Elena met his gaze. "If I leave, you will." The war didn't wait for their decision. Attacks came fast. One after another. Adrian's empire shook. Allies turned. Enemies circled. And in the middle of it all, Elena stayed. She tended his wounds. Held him when the night was loud with gunfire. Kissed him before every fight like it might be the last time. Adrian Volkov had never fought for territory like this before. He was fighting for love. And the city would bleed before he lost her again. The war ended on a night without stars. Rain soaked the city, washing blood from the streets as Adrian Volkov prepared for the final confrontation. Elena stood in his bedroom, watching him fasten his weapon with calm precision. He looked the same as always, controlled, lethal, but she knew better now. This time he wasn't fighting for power. He was fighting for her. "You don't have to come," Adrian said quietly, not looking at her. "I know," Elena replied. "But I will." He turned then, crossing the room in 2 long strides. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing gently beneath her eyes as if committing her to memory. "If anything happens to me," he began. She stopped him with a kiss. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow and deep, full of everything they'd survived to reach this moment. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. "We survive," she whispered. "Together." For the first time in his life, Adrian believed it. The confrontation was brutal and fast. A warehouse by the docks. Old enemies. Final debts. Gunfire echoed like thunder. Men fell. Power shifted. At the center of it all stood Adrian, unwavering, unstoppable, until a shot rang out from the shadows. Elena screamed his name. Adrian hit the ground hard, blood staining the concrete beneath him. The world seemed to freeze as she ran to him, dropping beside his body, hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please." His eyes fluttered open. He reached for her, fingers brushing her cheek. "Did I protect you?" he asked weakly. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "You always did." Sirens approached in the distance. Allies closed in. Enemies fled. Adrian Volkov survived. But something else died that night. The man who ruled through fear. Months later, the mansion felt different. Lighter. Elena stood on the balcony, sunlight warming her skin as Adrian stepped beside her. No guards hovered nearby. No weapons in sight. The city still whispered his name, but now it whispered differently. "You could still leave," Adrian said softly. "The offer stands." Elena turned to him, smiling gently. "I was bought once," she said. "But I choose you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like something precious, something earned. She fit there naturally now, not as a possession but as his equal. "I fell first," Adrian admitted quietly. Elena looked up at him. "But I stayed." He kissed her then, slow, certain, unafraid. The auction had taken her freedom. Love had given it back. And the most dangerous man in the city had learned the greatest truth of all. Power fades. But love changes everything.